What's going on, guys? And welcome to another episode. That's right, 3 days in a row, building consistency here, trying to give you guys some daily content. And luckily, with the NBA draft, there's a lot to talk about. And today on The Athletic, Blake Murphy released an article that talks a little bit about some of the potential options for the Toronto Raptors in terms of trading up in this year's draft. As we know, they've landed the fourth overall pick behind Cleveland, Detroit, and the Houston Rockets, all landing in the top three there. So for Toronto, they've got to look to potentially move up if they see a transcendent guy above where they're landing, because right now they're projected to get a guy like Jalen Suggs, who, as we know, has a lot of potential and has shown promise at Gonzaga, but there is other transcendent talent that might help the Raptors, given their goal of achieving a championship. And given their age, they're going to want to fast track this rebuild. They don't want this top four pick to be a project player. I've talked about this in previous episodes. And if this is your first time here, thanks for joining me. I'm going to start trying to do daily content, and over the season, I'm going to continue to do that. So make sure to subscribe not to miss anything. And today we're going to be talking about the three trades that Blake Murphy proposed on The Athletic. We're going to talk about all three, some implications. I'm going to push back a little bit on some of it. And for the most part, I'm going to talk about what I think the Raptors should do. So let's go from the ground up, and let's start with the Raptors drafting up to the third pick. And that would be trade number 3 on my list. And that's trading with the Cleveland Cavaliers, which currently have the third overall spot. And the Raptors would give them the number 4 pick, according to Blake Murphy, 46th pick, and a 2023 second round pick. In exchange, the Raptors get the third overall pick. So the Raptors get to move up one. And for the Toronto Raptors, this makes a lot of sense if they believe in a guy like Jalen Green or Evan Mobley, right? Because these are likely the two players who are going to be gone in the 2 and 3 spot, respectively, depending on what Detroit ends up doing. So the top 3 guys are sort of set up that way. So for the Toronto Raptors, they could move up to try and accelerate that rebuild and pick up a guy like Mobley or Green, who Mobley has that natural fit at the center position for Toronto. Even though he's projected to go number 2, this could end up playing out where the Raptors see Jalen Green get drafted by the Houston Rockets, given that they already have Christian Wood and don't necessarily have a prototypical fit there, which I'll talk about in my next trade. But for Toronto, that means that Mobley would probably slide to third, or at least has the chance to. And if that does happen, the Raptors have a good opportunity to trade up, give a couple picks, and get a guy like Mobley who seems to fit them better than it would be with the Cavaliers, right? Because they already have Jared Allen. They've already got a center there. They could definitely still add him to the mix, but trading down and getting extra assets does make a little sense for them. However, there are a lot of reports saying that they want to actually move towards accelerating their rebuild. So this trade doesn't make a lot of sense on that front. For Toronto, it makes a lot of sense because of the natural fit of a guy like Green or a guy who they really believe in, especially if they don't love a prospect like Suggs and they want to move up. This trade makes total sense for Toronto. You give up a couple extra picks, which are likely going to end up being, like I said, two second round picks, and this pick aren't going to have a ton of value overall. And it's just a great move for Toronto, in my opinion. But like I said, the Cavaliers are looking more to get veteran-type players around their current core. And I think that for Toronto, there isn't a lot of players on their team that fits that perfect mold in the middle where you can attach it to that third pick and make it enticing enough while also not giving up too much. I think a guy like Chris Boucher is right on the fence of that area, and if you have to give him up, I think that's probably the guy you'd want to do. From Toronto's perspective, anyone else, like once you get to Gary Trent Jr. and that level of player, it might be giving up too much considering how young they are. I think Boucher and the pick is probably my one counter offer, given that they want to accelerate that rebuild. You got a 28-year-old who can play off the bench, give you buckets, protect the rim. I think he would be a good fit, but like I said, I don't really see that happening. Now let's go to the second trade, which is with the Houston Rockets to acquire the second overall pick. And the Raptors would give up, according to Blake Murphy, the 4th pick, 46th overall pick, and a 2023 lottery protected first. So if the Raptors don't make the playoffs, they keep their pick in 2023. Our expectation is that at this point they'd be making the playoffs and competing and contending, but like I said, this is an option for them moving forward. And the Raptors in return will get the second overall pick. So they move up 2 spots in the draft, and they get the opportunity to pick up whichever player they want. Most likely Mobley or Mobley or Green, depending on who they like better. And the reason this makes sense for Houston is you get to recoup assets that you lost in the Chris Paul and Westbrook trade. As we know, they gave a lot of assets. In trading James Harden, they were able to recuperate a lot of those. But it seems like picking up draft assets is the way that GMs are moving. Maybe it's because it saves them their job, given that you don't see how it pans out for 5 years, so they buy themselves time. But in conjunction with that, the Raptors can at least take that pick and draft a guy who's ready now. A guy like Mobley who's a nice fit next to like a guy like Khem Birch. You could have Mobley coming off the bench as a youngster, learning from a guy like Birch who has a similar play style to him. I think that Mobley can stretch it out a little more, but it's a potential player that makes a lot of sense to me. But obviously, Jalen Green makes a lot of sense too. It's just you trust in Masai, but this gives them flexibility without having to give up too much. And for Houston, like I said, the fit for Mobley doesn't make a lot of sense. So if they move down to 4th, they could still get a guy they want. Maybe they want to build around a point guard like Suggs to operate in the pick and roll. A guy with a lot of poise, which is what I've heard is what Suggs brings to the table, and with defensive versatility next to a guy like Christian Wood moving forward. And now the last pick on my list here, and this is the big one. This is the one that excites me the most, and I think it's a fair trade. So Blake Murphy's trade proposition is the Pistons get the 4th overall pick, a 2023 unprotected first, and a top 3 protected 2025 first. And in return, the Raptors get the 1st overall pick. So the Raptors move up 3 spots. They give up 2 extra draft picks, but they're getting the opportunity to draft a transcendent player like Cade Cunningham, who can operate in the half court, run the Raptors offense, and gives them the ability to compete right away because he's already an NBA-ready player. He has poise, defensive versatility, gives them size and rebounding, while also giving them some playmaking. So it increases the size of their backcourt next to Fred VanVleet, likely putting Cade in more of a shooting guard position, playing off ball. He's shown the ability to do that and also handle the ball, attack the paint. If you haven't watched any of his games, full games, highlights, any of that, I would recommend you watch it. He's got a Luka Doncic type play style. I would say Luka light. I don't think he's going to be as good as him, but he's going to approach that level of potential because of how good a player he is. And for Toronto, this makes a lot of sense. And in return for the Pistons, this is a good move because for them, if they aren't sure about who they want to draft, if they're not certain about Cade Cunningham and don't fully believe in that type of player after watching him in the draft, and given the fact that they're willing to open this up, and I saw some reports about them being willing to do that for maybe ready now players, maybe more assets. For Toronto, you can give up a bunch of assets. Maybe you can even attach Malachi Flynn, throw him in there, a young player with some promise. We know tangibly what he brings to the table. We've seen it already a little bit, and we know he's going to just keep growing. So, whereas with picking the number 1 guy, there's a lot of pressure on him performing right away. If he comes to Toronto, he'd be in more of a role where he could be a little under the radar and develop over time. So it really just depends on what they want. But for Toronto, this makes a lot of sense, like I said, because he's a half-court operator. Toronto struggles in the half-court. He brings a lot to the table defensively as well. And for Detroit, they get to accumulate some assets, some trade pieces, and this would only make sense, as Blake Murphy does say in his article, if they aren't sure about who they want to draft. And it already seems like they are skeptical of who they want to pick, and that's why they're opening the table to opportunities for people to draft up or trade stars in return for that type of prospect and the opportunity to draft a guy like Cade Cunningham. We'll see what happens. I want to hear from you guys what you think the Raptors should do. And if you want them to draft up, if you want them to stay at the 4th pick and pick up a guy like Suggs, like Barnes, like Davion Mitchell, or even if you want the Raptors to draft down, I might actually talk about some opportunities for them to draft down, given the fact that what the Raptors want to do right now is win. So maybe they draft down to the 6th pick, 7th pick, and take Davion Mitchell and give a team like OKC the opportunity to draft up given their assets. But I'm not going to step on my toes too much. I think tomorrow I'll do a video about drafting down, some opportunities there. And this will be my own research, my own reports, versus this was sort of aided by Blake Murphy's 3 picks. So shout out to The Athletic. This is not sponsored. I follow them. It's like $1 a month for all their articles. They do amazing work. So thank you guys for listening. Let me know in the comments which trade you like the best. Maybe propose your own trades too. I want to hear them. I want to roast you guys. I want to hear what you guys do, and I want to hear some good trades too. So throw everything you got in the comments, good, bad, the ugly, and I will take a look. Thank you for listening once again. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out.